Now, we would like to have the keynote address. Mr. Yukihiro Matsumoto is the chairperson of the Executive Committee of the Ruby World Conference 2016 and also the chairman of the Ruby Association. And as all of you know very well, he is well known throughout the world as the creator of the Ruby language. Now, the title of his speech today is What Has Ruby Made Possible? Mr. Matsumoto, please. Again, good morning, everybody. Every year, I feel that, whoa, it's a big deal because when we made the Ruby, I didn't even dream that this will happen. It was just like making a motor car as a hobby. So in the conference, having the governors or the mayors coming to make the speech, and I'm so surprised with that. Anyway, I would like to make my opening address. So I would like to talk about what Ruby has made possible. My name is Yukihiro Matsumoto. And I also tried to put my name with a Kiri language, which says Yukihiro Matsumoto here. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I went to Russia, and we had a conference in Moscow, and I gave the opening keynote speech. And in the conference, participants and organizers, we talked about karoshi. Well, we hear a lot about in the media about the person who had to pass away because of the karoshi in a famous advertisement company. When we talk about that with the people in Europe, they say they don't understand. Why do they work too hard? I myself, I'm not the type of person who really works so hard, so I don't understand either. So that's what I say. But when I look at the Japanese culture and the habit where the people work very hard and also there's much pressure from the society, so in that way, many people in Japan work very hard, but still the impression from the people from other countries was that they don't really understand. Well, I imagine that maybe people from the U.S., American people might understand, maybe not so much as the Japanese people, but they work very hard, especially people in the startup company. They sometimes still live within the company, so they might have some understanding. But the people from Europe, it is quite common to take a vacation for 1 month or 2 months. So last month, I commemorated the 25th anniversary of marriage. Thank you. Or to be more precise, the end of this month. So for that purpose, I took 1 week vacation with my wife. So I talked about that to the Russian people. They said, only 1 week? You call that a vacation? And it's a 25th anniversary of your marriage. So well, I was saying that I was so proud to take 1 week vacation, but they say, well, why only 1 week? So I realized that I am Japanese also. So when we talk about that kind of thing, what was very impressive was that many of us, work to make the living. But for some people, they live to work. Maybe there are such kind of people. So sometimes we tend to work too much. The people in Europe have their own culture, but there are some psychological tendency in every human being that they tend to work too much. Well, some of the people really don't care about their family because they work too much. Or when the family members might blame them, the father is not at home, then the father might say, so who is working to make your living? So that's the psychological tendency that we see. And among those psychological tendency. There's one syndrome called the alpha syndrome. Maybe you have not heard about that, but I would like to explain what an alpha syndrome is. So just putting aside, computers are great. They can do a lot of work for us. The computers never get tired. They never be bored. They don't complain that it's boring. And when we ask them to do something, they would be doing that for 1 day or 1 week or even 1 month. They will continue to do the same work without getting bored. So they are very wonderful, and they are very fast in calculating and computing. And the first word computer in the world is called the ENIAC. They can make 5,000 computations in 1 second. That's not possible for the human beings. But with the computers that we have here, I don't know, billions or 10 billions or calculation is possible within 1 second, which is not comparable to the speed of the human being. So the strong area of the computers, like the processing capability or the calculating capability, is to help the human beings more productive and to do a lot of work. However, in the human beings, we have a alpha syndrome, so we have to be careful of that. So I would like to talk about what an alpha syndrome is. Alpha is a leader of a group of animals, like the group of wolves, of tens or hundreds of wolves, that they are called the alpha for the leaders, and the sub-leaders are called the beta. So they do have a hierarchy within their group. They do have their orders. So the one on the top act as a leader, and they are the second one. So there are such kind of hierarchy. And among that, the one on the top is called the alpha. So let's imagine that you have a dog, or maybe some of you have dog, and some of the people, they might say, we have a cat at home. So let's imagine that you have a dog. This is my dog. He seems to be not satisfied. Anyway, when you have dogs, they're so adorable. So you really pet them. You take care of them. For example, you take them for a walk. And also in the hot spring in Tamatsukuri, you might see myself a lot of times walking my dog. So that way we walk them, we take them to the toilet, also we give them food. So if you take care of that, and you really pet them, you feel like you can do anything you can for your dog or for your pet. Sometimes they bark, and it's in that case I might say you're too loud. But anyway, you feel like you want to do everything you can for the dog. So that makes the dog feel that, well, this person takes good care of me, so maybe I am very great. Maybe I should be the alpha among this group of family. I should be maybe the top person, the top. So the dog might think that I have to really take care of this group. So if there's somebody coming, I have to bark to protect them. And also, if they feed them, they might bark saying that you're not listening to what I'm saying. So that's going to be a bad behavior as a pet. So that's what we call the alpha syndrome. So the relationship between computer and human beings, sometimes we see the similar tendency. Computers are very efficient. They are and very productive. But they are not perfect, to be honest, or very far away from the perfection. So especially when we do the software development. But even ordinary people, when they use the computer at workplace, they rather not making these work convenient just by using the computer, but rather they're taking care of the computer, or they helping the computer not having any problems. So sometimes what happens is that people are working for the computers. So what happens then? You pay your effort for the great computer. Then, as a psychological tendency of the human beings, you start to think that computers are the alpha, the leader of our group. That's a tendency. Of course, we are not really aware of that, but without being conscious of that, that's what we happen to have. So you gradually become the slaves of the computers, or you think without being conscious. So that's what I call the reverse alpha syndrome. The computer themselves do not think, they don't think because they're machines, but the human beings start to think that the computers are the alpha, so they place themselves lower as in a position than the computer, and the human beings are working for the computers. But we have to remember that you are the master. Computers are the tool for us. We are the masters. Computers are working for us. That's what we need to remember. So we should not work too hard for that. What we should be is more lazy. We have to be lazy. I think that should be the principle. So let the computers work for us. So that's the first message I would like to tell you. It's been a long time since I started creating the Ruby. In 1993, I made Ruby open in the internet in 1995. So it's more than 20 years since I started creating the Ruby. And in the background, there are some principles. When I made the design of the Ruby at first, what I wanted to achieve was a productivity. I want to deliver the productivity who are working for the development, and also to make it more efficient. And not only making efficient, but also we wanted to make the programmers feel happy when they are working for the development of the program. And for that purpose, I was focusing on humans. So if the processing speed is very high or the feature is very high, this is a computer-based effect. But more important was that how the people might feel by working with the Ruby. So that was my idea in making the Ruby. And Ruby is an object-oriented language. So among the object-oriented language, there are the dynamic typing kind of language. That's the kind of processing. And among the various principles, there are what we call the duck typing among the Ruby's principles. Of course, it is not that I used the word duck typing from the very beginning. There was no name at the beginning, but the image or the principle that I had in my mind was like some kind of idea of a duck typing. Maybe some of you have heard, or maybe you have never heard of the word about duck typing. It's not like this. So I was maybe it's a joke that I'm trying to say duck is typing, or not. This is not the duck typing either. The person is here, sitting there. He is typing together with a duck, but that's not the duck typing. This is an old English song. I have heard that there's an expression that says, if it walks like a duck and quack like a duck, it is a duck. So that's why I'm using the duck word. So if you behave as a duck, you assume it is a duck. So that's the idea of the duck typing. And if you quack, let's say this is a duck. If you quack like a duck, and if you walk like a duck, then that becomes a duck. So that's the essence of the object-oriented programming. So no classification is done. We don't classify whether this is a duck or not. You're not saying that biological, this is a duck. We don't do that classification. It's an animal, it's a mammal, and a human. So these kinds of hierarchical analysis doesn't make sense. And we don't do any type check like, are you a duck? Have you checked your DNA? And maybe you have a DNA of a duck, then you can move on to the next process. That's not what we say. Or we just ask them to behave like a duck, and if it's behave like a duck, it's okay. So in this object-oriented program, the idea of inheritance is not important, and also about the structure, what kind of data is included. We don't have to care about that. And if we give some orders, how it behaves, that's the only important part. So for the inside details, we don't have to think of that. We just give the orders and the result comes back. So that's the only points that we should focus on. So if we ask the computers to process or make the dispatch, if we all rely on the computer, we just let them do. So we can just force them to work for us. So that means we don't have to work. So that's what I really wanted to realize. So that's the principle of the duck typing. So let the computers do the work as much as possible. Let the computers work for us. And so that as a result, we don't have to work too hard. And we want to be lazy. So the duck typing's principle is how much we can become a lazy person. We want to become more lazy. That's the language.
Sorry. Yes. And one more quite important essence of a Ruby is a dry. This is not a dry, no moisture. That is not true. This is a don't repeat yourself. That means to avoid duplications and avoid redundancy and avoid copy and paste. That is the meaning of dry. And why we want to avoid this kind of thing? They are bad because they are bad. For example, if you see some codes and if there is some code redundancy or wrong, then if you just take copies and then just paste them to other places in the program, then what we do is you copy the bag of that code as well. And if the paste is done 10 times and then you realize the bag and then you try to just correct the bag 8 or 9 places, and then you are left with the 10 and the remaining one bag. But if you have not but if you can avoid redundancy, then you can prevent that kind of error. And then dry is the essence of a Ruby. Then the reduced volume of codes. Yes, that's the thing people often say. But the bags and redundancy, yes, that is a quite important thing to avoid. But the first principle you want to say is be lazy. So if we can find redundancy and duplications, then try to just to correct them, all of them. I think that is quite cumbersome. If you can make that correction process simple or as simple as possible, then that would be quite good as lazy people. So we want to leave that kind of work to computers. Dry and no redundancy. That is the reason we want to do that. So here the duck typing and the dry, both of the essences are connected to the spirit of laziness. So to be honest, we shouldn't work so hard and we should be lazy. That is not what I thought at the beginning. But actually, when I look at my own spirit deeper and deeper, yes, I just reached this point, spirit of laziness. That is a core part of my programmer's nature. And then I think that may explain why we have been developing Ruby like this. And then there is some predecessor of Ruby, the Perl, a programming named Perl. And then programmer or the creator of Perl is Raleigh Ward. He is recognized in the world as a programmer, and I respect him very much. And yes, I wish to be like him and then try to create a new language and just make a keynote at different conferences. Actually, Raleigh Ward's presentation is quite interesting. And this is one of the things he said. There are 3 virtues to be a great programmer. And I would like to share what he said with you. He said that in order to be a great programmer, you need to be lazy. And again, the laziness, the same word. And then you need to be impatient. And also hubris, a little bit rare word people use, but this is arrogance, self-centered nature. I think these are the 3 virtues of a great programmer, he said. Well, just look at these 3 virtues. They look bad if you are not a programmer. Laziness, impatience, hubris, these things are quite bad if you want to live in just an ordinary community, the society. But I would like to look at them one by one. First one is laziness. And a little bit of longer sentence in English, but to be lazy. That means you would like to reduce the overall energy expenditure, and you are ready to do anything to reduce overall energy expenditure. It sounds a little bit contraindicating, but this is one of the natures you can see in programmers. And not only to reduce your work easier, but also to just avoid the same questions asked again and again to you. A little bit becomes annoying. So in order to just avoid that kind of situations, you are ready to prepare a document to just answer to the repeated questions. So creating software, and then in order to avoid a repetition of the same questions, the writing a document. So these are the principle to being laziness. If you do not, if you cannot do this kind of thing, perhaps you don't want to be a programmer. So this is the laziness, essence of laziness. And next is impatience. Impatience means if the computer is lazy, performing quite lazy, you may feel angry. You would get angry. Yes, you want to be lazy, but computer cannot be or should not be lazy. So that is the instance, the meaning of impatience. There is some need, and you have to develop software to fulfill that needs. In addition, that software need to predict what you want to do and what you want to process. Yes, I think that is impossible. The computer cannot predict what you are going to do, but at least the computer need to or should pretend to predict what you want to do. So that is impatience. And then this is instance to just improve the quality and the performance of software. So impatience is also a very important virtue to be a great programmer. And the third one is a hubris. So software is developed, and somebody complained about the developed software, then you feel bad, you get angry. In order to just avoid complaints from other people from the market, you would like to just improve, for example, Ruby, your software or programs. So at the beginning of a development and during the process of development, yes, you would like to avoid any complaints at the end. So I think that is a kind of a hubris, and that gives you a very good motivation, big motivation to develop the better software or programs. And particularly the laziness is the most important virtue, he said that way. So again, not only me, but also the Ruby, just based on my own spirit, Ruby as a good example to be lazy, and the Perl founder, the Raleigh Wall, also say that laziness, impatience, and hubris. That means again the laziness. Laziness is very, very important. The important the feature or nature to be a great programmer. Then you should not work too much, and you should be lazy. You try to be lazy, and not just try to reduce the workload, but also you need to be happy in working, such as programming and maintenance and other things. So enjoy programming. I think that is very important in the sense. And some people say that programming that is a way to live. And then some people say that a high salary is a good motivation to develop good programs. Yes, you may say that way. But you are now involved in software programming or development. Why don't we enjoy the process? Because this is quite creative work, and that is a quite enjoyable thing. And also, there are some cumbersome and difficult things in the process of programming, such as quite legwork maintenance works or control everything in the program. But if we can reduce that kind of thing, and if we can focus on the only enjoyable things, that's great. Then what we have to do is to remember Ruby principles. Productivity. We want to increase productivity and development efficiency and the programmer's happiness, and focus on humans. So these are the principles of Ruby, and in order to implement these things, we need to have greater power, more power. So we want to make us happy programmer. We want to be a happy programmers. That means we don't want to work hard. We want to enjoy the development of software without being hectic. And we should be alpha. The computer shouldn't be alpha, not our boss. So that means we need to avoid alpha syndrome. So humans and programmers need to have a much greater power. So the Ruby and the Rails, they have been developed based on that kind of a spirit or principles. So that means Ruby and Rails give you power, greater power, particularly as compared to other programming languages. Shorter time and a smaller team and more favorable way to you. Using Ruby Rails, you can complete the software programs. So that means you can have a greater impact on the community or society. So that means the greater power you can enjoy. So Ruby Rails, I think, as I said, the Ruby Rails will give you power. So making use of the power of computers and programming, you can have a greater power as a human. And I think that is our ultimate goals as a Ruby users. So empowering programmers, that is what I want to say. This is what the Ruby communities have been doing. And you are Ruby users, and you are now sitting and attending this Ruby World Conference all the way to this place. I think that's because you feel that Ruby is quite helpful and empower you to develop a new software and programs in your business. And then we are Ruby creators, and that is our goal as well. And I trust you. So if you get power and try to do something big, then what would happen? You may know a movie named Spider-Man, and Peter Parker, he is a Spider-Man, and his uncle was killed or shot to death. And then he realized that the Spider-Man is his nephew, and he said in that last verse to Peter, "Greater power comes with great responsibility." And then, yes, the ruby empowers you like a Spider-Man's power, but at the same time, you are responsible for the great thing you want to do with Ruby. So yes, a lot of ideas, a lot of achievements, and then many of you have some impact on the society as well. For example, at the beginning of Twitter, actually the Twitter program was created only with Ruby. Nowadays a little bit different, but particularly earlier Twitter was created in Ruby, and then there was a big impact on community, and a lot of services, and perhaps Cookpad may be the most famous one created in Ruby. And then sometimes Cookpad is identified in some program drama, TV dramas, and it is a kind of surprise, unexpected news. But indirectly, you can have an impact on the society. And then, for example, if I just said to my child that my product, the Ruby, just ran the Cookpad on internet, and then not so good positive reaction from my child I can get. But more than 10 years ago, Troy's horse, a kind of a virus and through the computers that is to just attack the weak points of Windows. Actually, somebody just developed that kind of a virus program in Ruby, and you cannot stop that if you really want to do that. But if possible, please do not do that kind of thing. But so in that the point I want to say is that I trust you, and the great power is associated with the great responsibility. So anyway, a greater power to programmers over the 20 years. There has a big involvement, development of Ruby, better performance, and then a lot of things you can do, although you couldn't in the past, and the support tools, and then frameworks, and the Ruby, and applications of Ruby. There are a lot program softwares working on Ruby.
So we have the better foundation now. Now, we would like to give power and empower you, but we do not want to work for computers. We would like to utilize computers, and we have to get the power for ourselves. Now, after all the talks, I want to look back the history of Ruby, what Ruby made possible. Let us recap on that. So I'm going to summarize now. One thing, as I have been talking, Ruby has made you lazier. So you became lazier. And that's one of the things Ruby achieved. And the second is improved productivity. Than other programming languages or tools, it's faster, easier, cheaper to provide a system or services. That's another achievement of Ruby. And thirdly, Ruby has delivered happiness to programmers and developers. They only need shorter time, and efficiency improved, and Ruby decreased stress. It's not totally stress-free. However, the environment is less stress if you use Ruby. So those are the achievements of Ruby. And the theme of this conference is this. Ecosystem of Ruby has been built. That's one of the themes of the conference. Ruby itself is just a language, so there's a limitation what Ruby can. However, in the peripheral area of Ruby, there are many things, and there is an ecosystem surrounding Ruby already built, including accumulation of the resources. It's not only for Ruby, but frameworks, Ruby on Rails, or other framework like Sinatra, and there are many other frameworks already accumulated as resources. And beyond that, we have web applications. They are also considered as assets or resources. And other implementation like JRuby and MRuby. So other implementation is asset we have. And we have library collection of Ruby gems. If you would like to use Ruby to do something to develop web application, first thing you should look is Ruby gems. And most of the case, you get something you'd like to do, like write and read email or the database management. Already there are libraries for them. So there are a variety of libraries in Ruby gems. You don't have to do from the scratch. Then you can be lazier. That's great, don't you think so? So those resources are very important factor in the Ruby ecosystem. And another achievement is a steady progress. Recently, if I look on website, it is important for me to gather information through Ruby, and there are some comments like Ruby is already dead because the GitHub star said the biggest star of the GitHub is for Java. And if we look at the only single month of the stars, for Ruby, it's much, much smaller than Java. So some people say that the Ruby is dead and there is no innovation in the world of Ruby anymore. But thinking about this, for the new technology, it's great to have the new technology, but it's not only because they are new. Rather than that, we have to think about what we'd like to achieve and what is the cost needed. And the gap between the two need to be small, and that is the area Ruby is very good at. So even there are many new technology comes and goes, however, it's not the best thing. Looking at the open source community, they do not like to stay as it is because it's a community of people. They always look for something new or changes. Otherwise, they are not attracted. So in case of Ruby, we are not making drastic changes. However, we have been making steady progresses. As a community leader or the designer of the Ruby and the committer of the Ruby, for them, we do not see drastic changes. We do not have the disruptive changes. That's true, but in fact, we have been making steady and positive progresses. We have been making continuous improvement. That's our history, and the history remains unchanged going forward. That's one of many achievements of Ruby. And to think about the ecosystem, the biggest part is the community. The word community is very often used like open source community. But sometimes community does not come with the reality. There's no such organization like the community, and there's no criteria to be a member of a community. You are not paying the membership fee or the registration fee. And someone, if he or she think I might be a member of the community, then he or she is already a community member. So it's rather vague or ambiguous. But community is consist of many different people. And often the case, there's no community membership. So if you think Ruby is good for him or her, then that person is already a part of a community. And there is a culture of the members of the community. It's been nurtured over years. Ruby has many things, like some are traditional, for example, financial. In comparison with the financial system developer, the way of development might be rather loose for those developers because we have different cultures. But there are pros and cons for different cultures, and we have been absorbing good aspects of different cultures. And now we have Ruby cultures, and we are educating more and more people so that they can join us more and more in our community. So the development of the culture of Ruby is another achievement. And we have already observed internalization of the Ruby world. Looking back to 2001, when we have the first Ruby conference, it was the world first in 2001 in Tampa in Florida in the US. Florida in 2001. Let's think about that. I attended there. I actually said no to others to go. There was anthrax virus there, so there was health-related issues in the United States. Do you remember that happened right after 9/11, and that happened in Florida? So there was concern about the health, but I actually went and there was nothing happened. So at the first Ruby conference, it's like this conference, you may think of that. However, there are only 38 attendees in the first Ruby conference. So that's rather small. A few years later, in case of 2006, we hold first Ruby Kaigi in Japan. In this Ruby Kaigi, at the beginning, that's a conference by Japanese for Japanese, but now it's internationalized. Presenters and participants are now globalized. Ruby Kaigi or Ruby Conference is a rather Sparta conference. We hold Ruby Kaigi in Kyoto this year. For Japanese presenter, you have translator. And the non-Japanese, they normally present in their own languages. In that case, there's no translator assigned. So for foreign language presentations, Japanese has to listen to original language or English presentation without translation. But we, Ruby World Conference, we have both ways, from English to Japanese and Japanese to English as well. But in that represents the internationalization of the Ruby community as of 2001. There may be some people who are already thinking about the Ruby International Conference, and they already understand the need of the exchange with overseas developers, but the number was very, very small. But in the past 10 years, even if we have a conference in Japan, they do understand the need of the translation. And even the conference venue is in Japan, we sometimes have translator for English. So we are more and more globalized. And some of the developers think about working overseas. And it is now getting more common to have exchange with foreign developers. That's a big change in the past 10 years. So this is a big change of the tide. And a part of the change was led by Ruby, I believe. So I am very proud. What Ruby has achieved, there are many. But the achievement by Ruby as language is limited, but in a wider perspective, ecosystem was built and the culture was nurtured. And the walls of the mind of the people, wall of the mind of the people has been removed by Ruby. Ruby has impacted many people. I am so proud of that fact. Regardless of the location of conferences, I encounter many Ruby developers and users, and many of them thank me to make Ruby, and they say there's huge impact on their lives. And some say that they change jobs thanks to Ruby or a startup company, and they remember the enjoyness of the programming. So many people say Ruby has changed their lives, and I saw so many such engineers. That was not my original intention, but as a result, there are many achievements of Ruby, and I'm proud of all the achievements. So for all Ruby users, each one of you, I hope Ruby will be beneficial for your life so that you can be lazy, you can just depend on computer for work, you can be relaxed, but you can still earn well. So there are more and more greater achievements we can think about, and I'd like to support you. And please utilize the power from the ecosystem of the Ruby for the great achievement. Happy hacking. Thank you very much for your attention. Now, we'd like to take questions from the floor. So if you have a question, please raise your hand.
いらっしゃいませんか。あ、はい。ではマイクをお持ちします。
Then I will carry the microphone to you.
声の方ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much for the speech. As a programmer, I think it's a good thing to become a programmer for the Ruby. And as a language of the programming as Ruby, what are you thinking for the future Ruby? And as for the ecosystem, do you have any ideas for the future? Well, it's been a long time since Ruby was made, and the environment has changed a lot. So I need to deal with this. So a few years later, we're thinking of the major version 3 of the Ruby might come out. And there will be some detailed changes, but adding to that, we have 3 pillars. I was not making a presentation today. However, one of the pillars is to make the better performance, to improve the performance. So in a few years, I would like to make the drastic improvement for Ruby's performance. That's one thing. And another one is about the concurrency, to make all the works in parallels. I would like to realize that in the 1990s that we made the Ruby, the computer CPU was only one for one computer. So that was the common sense those days in the 1990s. But now, even with the normal computers, they do have 2 or 3 or even 8 CPUs in one computer. And also, recently, mobile phones are becoming like with 8 CPUs. They're changing so much. So if there are various CPU, of course, naturally, you might think that you would like to use them at the same time. So when we created the Ruby at the beginning, I think not many people could see the forecast of the future 20 years later, so that there might be multiple CPUs. So that's the area that we need some improvement, so that we can have multiple CPUs at the same time and utilize it. And also on the cloud, maybe many computers can be connected at the same time, and various CPUs will be working at the same time. So this is going to be another important aspect we need to add for the Ruby for the future. And the last one, the third one, is to strengthen the error check function, because Ruby is a dynamic kind of language. So we have to implement that to see whether there's an error or not. So with compiling analysis to become stronger, we should look at the static analysis as well. So that's the area that we want to strengthen with Ruby. And so in few years, we're still at the level of experimenting those improvements, but those are the things that we want to improve in Ruby, so that we hope that we can help you for the software development for the Ruby. Thank you. I really have strong expectation. Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much. I hope you to be more and more happy in the future with Ruby. But we are a little bit ahead of the schedule. Yes, people are impatient in that sense. Yes, I think this is to make people happier and then have a longer break time, probably. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Matsumoto.